All right, we are
Hello.
live. Hello, everybody. I know there's like a lag, so hopefully it's working. We'll see. All right, we are. Give it a second. All right, we are live. Yay!
Hello.
Live. Hello, everybody. I know there's like a. There we go. Sorry, I did not mute that. All right. Anyway, so here we are. We are with the World Wide Writeathon chat number 4. And since this is my channel, you guys already know that I am Kayla Canoe, author, YouTuber, gamer, and aerialist. And these are my friends. I'm going to let them go ahead and introduce themselves.
So my name is Laurie Nettles. I have a YouTube channel where I vlog my writing experience and read some of my horror flash fictions. And yeah, hello.
It's my turn.
Oh,
I think so.
Yeah, please.
Okay, my name is Camille Myrick. I'm the author of a poetry collection. I write adult thrillers and literary horror. I'm currently working on my debut novel that I'm going to be querying in the spring, around February or March of this coming year. So we are on deadlines.
Yay.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Jenna Lynn Brown. I write gay romances, sometimes dipping my feet into the paranormal. And my current novel. What is that?
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I couldn't figure out what that sound was. My current novel is called Fidele, and it is a nostalgic ghost story / romance.
Awesome. And I realized I didn't actually mention what I write. I write adult dark fiction and dark sci-fi and LGBTQ plus romance. And I have a boy love series that's a web novel. It's out there.
I do horror flash fictions and short stories and sci-fi novels.
All right. Got some people in here. And if any of you guys have any questions in the chat, please feel free to drop them. We will answer them. You know, writing and book related questions, of course. Let's see. What question can we start with?
So I have a question. I didn't start writing horror until this year, and my family likes to read what I write, and so they started reading it, and they were horrified. So you guys have a balance between, like, you want to write dark things, but you want your family to read what you write, and, like, how do you still write something that is dark? Like,
Oh. Well, that's a really interesting question. I do not want my family to read what I write. I do not care if they never read a word that I ever write. And it's funny because my mom recently had a conversation with one of my cousins about how I used to be into horror, but I grew out of all of that dark stuff, and that, like, I've gone to the light and everything. And I was like, Mother, I write horror novels. But my she was being all weird because my mom's just, like, superstitious about things, you know. And so my cousin was talking about playing Dungeons and Dragons, and my mom was just, like, really confused by that. She was like, you don't need to be playing those dark games. She's like, Camille used to be into Stephen King and all that, but she's grown out of it. And I literally texted my cousin and was like, I am literally writing a novel right now that would make her vomit upon reading it. It's got so much body horror in it. Like, just so much body horror. It is one of the most gruesome things I've literally ever written. And I'm like, I am obsessed with Stephen King still. Like, I'm more so now that, like, I'm married and I have a kid and I live my own life. So the further I got away from family, the more I've been able to really embrace what I write. Because I think, me personally, I never called myself a horror writer until this year, when I was trying to figure out what genre would be like my wheelhouse. So I got all of my ideas out, separated them into genre, and took an average of like the ideas. And it was like 75% thrillers and horror ideas. And I was like, man, I don't want to say that though. And then I was like, you know what? We're just going to embrace it. And I was just like, this is who I am. And y'all are just going to have to get over it. And y'all aren't going to like my books. And you can't recommend them to your congregation because I have pastor parents. And I'm like, you cannot be telling your church folks, Camille's got a book coming out. I'm like, I will not reflect well on you. Just go ahead and know that from the gate. You know what I'm saying? So I gave them their pretty little flowery poetry collection. They can just fangirl over that for a while, but everything else I'm keeping on the DL.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. I come from a very conservative family, so only my younger sister, who I'm very close to, knows exactly what I write.
Mm-hmm.
Even she doesn't want to read it. All right. Fine.
Which actually, I would love to talk to you about this gay cozy mystery series that I have on the back burner. And it's based off of my actual real life friend who lives in like this historic town in Tennessee. And it's like a Southern Gothic mystery. Him teaming up with like the old lady ghost who lives in his attic.
That sounds awesome.
And they team up together to like solve like Civil War mysteries. And it's kind of a little historical, completely outside of anything I've ever written. But my friend will literally call me up and be like, talk about, he calls her Miss Fern. Miss Fern, she doesn't like when I go upstairs after dark because I let her have her privacy and she lives upstairs. And he tells me all these supernatural stories. And I'm like, please let me write a book series. Please. Like, this is a once in a lifetime chance to have a book written about you and it'll be real. And I'll even give you like 10% royalties. It'll be great.
That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah. I'm excited about it.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so as far as the whole family reading of the books, it's funny because I actually just had this conversation with my mom where I was like, yeah, I'm releasing my book in the this upcoming spring, and I was like, yeah, I'll just gift copies to everyone for Christmas so that they can have their signed copy to put on their bookshelf. But I was like, because I just assumed that no one's going to actually read it, based off my family, that they would just like to have there. And my mom was like, no, they'll probably read it. And I was like, oh.
Maybe not that.
Maybe gift it for Halloween
maybe
instead of Christmas.
And then my mom was like, what are you writing? And I was like, it's just dark fantasy with a lot of LGBTQ plus BDSM stuff happening. So, yeah. But,
I live.
Yeah. Like a lot of my stuff has witches and like just dark things happen in them. And it's hard because I am also a visual effects lighting artist. So I work on movies during the day.
Oh, hell.
And a lot of
That is
movies
so
I
cool.
work on are rated R. And so, like, I worked on The Shape of Water, which is a creature romance. And so
Oh, my God.
So good.
awesome.
I can't really show you what I work on, and now you don't want to read what I write. So,
That is so neat. I love it. I think most of my horror centers more around, like, well, okay, I'll just say I have very much a niche that I like to write in, which is like Southern Gothic and folk noir, like meth land horror stories. So like out in the sticks, like the horrific stuff that goes on like interpersonally between people, and also like abuse and like real life horrors, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But also sometimes there's like a supernatural spin on it. But like the novel I'm writing right now, my main character is actually like a sociopath. I don't think she knows that, but she's like almost dissociated from like the level of abuse that she suffered as a child, and she's lied to everyone in her adult life about where she's come from, and her parents have just died in a meth house explosion, but her husband already thinks her parents are dead, so she's like got this estate that she's got to deal with, but if she deals with it, then her husband's gonna know she lied. And it's like already on the rocks and stuff. But there's also like a Blair Witch element to it, which is like where the horror comes in. It's like I'm enjoying it. I'm just saying. I'm just enjoying my fucking self over here. That's all.
That's awesome.
I never talk about my story either, because like literally no one cares. No one in my life cares. Ever. Like AuthorTube is the only place where people care about hearing about stories, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I feel like I always get thrown off when like someone actually asks about what I'm writing. And I was like, I don't even know how to talk about what I'm writing. I was like, I need to like make a plan to be able to tell people about my book. Because I was like, it's fantasy. Like a dark fantasy, high fantasy. I don't know how to explain that very well.
I get people who ask me, how's the writing going? You know, and it's just like, if I explain it, would you even understand? It's like, well, I wrote 500 words yesterday and they were pretty good. So, you know.
Yeah, it always gets me when people try to like quantify it. They're like, oh, how much you got left, or how far are you? And I'm like, that's not really, it's not super quantifiable.
Yeah, it's not relevant.
Especially when you're like editing and things like that. And like, oh, when do you think you're gonna be done? I was like, done? I don't know that done's really it's not really definitive.
I know that the target that would be best for my novel is going to be like 85,000 words. So I'm almost at 40,000, which I'm hoping to get to today. And then I want to just finish the novel by the end of the month and then like polish it up. But I kind of have this benchmark out in front of me of Pit Mad in December. I really want to like pitch then, but it has to be like query ready.
Yeah.
So Nanowrimo is going to be my first, second, and third draft month. Like, I'm going to do like 3 or 4 drafts, and I'm just going to do them like back to back to back as fast as I can. Which this draft is a lot cleaner than my first novel. My first novel was like a solid 13-year-old's diary level quality. Real prestigious stuff. And I remember like reading over it and being like, there's absolutely nothing I can even edit from this. And so I'm really feeling good with this one. It's coming out a little bit cleaner and there's a lot more plot going on. Dear God, wish me luck though.
Good luck, because I want to read this.
Oh, I'm excited. You want a beta read? December.
Sure.
Are you available in December, like December 1st? Okay, honey.
Yeah,
I got your email.
All right. I'll look for it.
All right.
And if I start talking with a Southern accent, I apologize. We lived in East Texas for a while when I was a kid. And my mom says that when he came back to California, I had a Texas accent. And I find whenever I hang around people who have a Southern accent, it comes back. So
My best friend's like that. She grew up in Tennessee, Austin K. She grew up in Tennessee. She's a Southern girl, but now she lives in Michigan. But when she's around me, she talks like the devil all the time. Did y'all see that one? like that.
Clips. I haven't watched the movie.
Lord bless your heart. Like that deep drawl, and she just lets it fly. And I used to work really hard to mask my accent, but now that I write Southern Gothic, I'm like, it's kind of my brand. So just go be me from now on. Perfect excuse.
I love it.
What is the weirdest thing you've had to Google for your current whip? I did Google something disgusting the other day. What was it? Let me check history.
So my Gothic romance short story that I just wrote, there is a suicide attempt in it. And so I was trying to figure out what methods were used in the Victorian era for men. And so I had to go through all of these papers with all of these like autopsies of it was this type, like it was gunshot, it was stabbing, it was all these different things. And so that was pretty dark. And most of the normal Google search results were use this for the helpline. It's like, it's not, no, I'm okay.
The most recent thing I Googled was today was Mississippi snow globe, because I wanted to know if there was even such a thing as a Mississippi snow globe, because it doesn't snow in Mississippi. So I was like, do we even have snow globes? Like, do we make snow globes as souvenirs? And I did find some, because main character or whatever, she's out on this trail running a trail run, and she's got to go to checkpoints and pick up items to take back to prove that she did the course, right? And the founder of this race is such a sadistic. Every time she stops at a checkpoint, it's something incredibly heavy that she's got to carry, like on this marathon. And so I was like, a snow globe would be heavy, but does Mississippi have a snow globe? Does it? That wasn't the disgusting thing, but I can't find it.
So the weirdest thing that I've Googled recently is I wanted to use a joke about how a bagel's a depressed donut. And I couldn't remember if that was something original or if it was something that someone else had said. So I did a search for it to see if anyone else had said it, and I could not find anyone else saying it. So the story made that joke.
I feel like I've heard that though.
Yeah. Maybe it's the same. I know.
I can't really think of anything like specific that I've Google searched for my debut novel. I know that recently I was Google searching like what kind of body language do people express when they're mortified, because I'm terrible at descriptions. And I was like, what does that even look like? So that's probably the weirdest thing I've Google searched recently is what people look like when they're mortified. So
I don't know. I feel like it might have been something about like what ingredients go into meth or something. Like, is it Windex and rat poison, or is it bleach and rat poison? Not that I need to know, but not for me, I swear.
Need that disclaimer. Dear FBI, I promise. I'm just a writer.
Can you imagine how freaking hard it is to be like a bath bomb consultant and be like talking on the phone and be like, okay, yeah, I've got the bombs. Oh yeah, they're all loaded. They're all loaded with the goods? Yes. And like, you know, do you have the sodium to go with the bombs? Okay, great. Like, can you imagine how many like bath bomb sellers get paid by the freaking CIA?
The buyer for Lush.
I got stopped in the airport because I had bath bombs and caramel apples in my carry-on. So they're like, these are bomb shaped. What is this? Like, I promise I just came from Disney World.
Let's see. What else? There's so much ground to cover, though, with dark writing.
It really is. Another question. Oh. So I will go first because this is going to be super easy for me because I didn't start actually writing until I was out of college. So my very first dark story is my debut novel, which is The Reckoning, which is my dark fantasy series. So I was, 22 when I started writing it, I think. Maybe 20, 22, 24. Maybe I was 24. Yeah. Pretty old.
For me, it was this year, so I was 30. And then my first one, so I started writing them for Charlie Dorset's podcast. So I wrote 2 Lovecraft ones, and then a Witches Purging the Christians one. So they have witch trials to get rid of people, and then it turns out that the ones that they were all killing were the Christians, only the witches were left, and so they rejoiced in the end, and it was quite dark. So those were my first couple of Gothic dark stories, and yeah, that's it.
My first really dark story that like worried my mother. I remember I wrote, I think I was in the 2nd or 3rd grade. And it was like a couple years after my dad had died. My biological dad had died of brain cancer. And I was like really, really depressed from there on out. Like still haven't recovered from that. But I was like, I wrote the story about a girl who's like steps out on a busy street and gets sucked down into like a sewer pipe. And like as she just like gets sucked into the underworld, and as she's like going down, like hearing like the screams of hell and everything, and it was like she was traveling like interdimensionally or something. I thought it was super fucking cool at the time. And my mom ripped it out of my notebook and like burned it and was like, "What's wrong with you? You're going to therapy." And I was like, "Mom, it's a good story." And then I also wrote one about a black cat. I don't know what was with me in interdimensional stuff, but like a cat that like had access to walk through like a mirror into like an opposite kind of like an upside down, I guess. And kind of like the cat and Coraline that can go between the two worlds. But my mom loved that story for some reason. It was, I guess it was the screaming of hell. I think that's what it was that threw her off a little bit.
I wasn't even allowed to watch The Hunchback of Notre Dame because of the Hellfire song as a kid.
Oh,
Well, I'm sure that I wrote ghost stories when I was younger. That's always been my interest with supernatural stuff. The first ghost story that I ever wrote that scared people was actually a piece of X-Files fan fiction back in the day. So that would have been about 2000 or so, and it had possession and murdered children and all that sort of thing.
Oh, that is so cool.
It was a lot of fun.
I was into the X-Files. Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. I feel like I cut my teeth as a writer writing X-Files fan fiction. I don't think I'd be where I am today without it.
Right. Oh my gosh. Wait, but you have to tell me, was the two, well, hell, I can't even remember now because you asked me, but you didn't ask me. Let's see, what, right on the tip of my tongue, the 2 agents that have all the sexual tension and stuff.
Mulder and Scully, yeah.
Yeah. Did they end up with different people, or did they end up together in your fanfic?
In this fanfic, Mulder's dead. They dead. It was actually about Scully and Doggett because I really liked Doggett a lot.
Oh, that's
So
a good match. That's a good match. I like that.
yeah, it made me very happy.
You know, he deserves somebody.
Yeah.
Putting up with all them shenanigans all the time.
Right.
Well, the latest novel is also a ghost story, but it's how to describe it exactly. It's a revenge kind of thing, and a family haunting in a haunted house. So
So it's
Oh, that's a good question.
October. What are some of your guys' favorite Halloween movies to watch? Or scary movies?
Poltergeist is my ultimate favorite.
Okay.
It's my absolute favorite.
Oh.
I always try to watch the original Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. I definitely like Halloween around Halloween time, but I was raised on horror movies, slasher films. Back when Netflix first came out and had nothing but really obscure movies on it, I used to just watch horror of all varying levels of quality. Nightmare on Elm Street is probably my favorite, just because Freddy is my favorite. But I like a lot of different horror movies for different reasons.
My newest favorite is The Houses October Built. I'm a found footage girl, so like if a movie is in found footage format, I'm automatically gonna love it. I don't know why, something about it just like gets under my skin. The thing that scares me the most though is a monster in a movie that's jaw dislocates and their mouth comes open really wide.
Yes.
Can't. So like Grave Encounters, I watch that if I really just want to piss myself.
That makes me think of like the scarier versions of A Christmas Carol. There's always a scene, if they're going to do that, where Marley undoes the bandage around his head, and because he's dead,
Blech.
his mouth falls open. Yeah,
That's my biggest fear. I don't want to die with my mouth open. Like if you could just wire it shut, like on my deathbed, and just be like, I do not want to sit here with my mouth open.
Yeah, I
know there's not much I can do, but
The thing that always got me in movies was the bugs in the ears.
Yeah.
You can't close your ears. So Star Trek Wrath of Khan, I still cannot watch that scene to this day.
Well, you know what the open mouth makes me think of? It's almost as if someone's soul literally had to like claw their way out of someone's mouth and crawl out to escape, like in death. And I'm like, did you birth a baby out that mouth? Like that's crazy. And I've seen a lot of dead people, like freshly dead people. And my mom used to love working hospice for some reason, but instead of just like getting a job in hospice, she just moved terminally ill people into the house and like adopt them. And she just loved that. I don't know why. Like we met like a lot of really great people that way, but it was just kind of traumatic at some point. Like just always death all the time.
Yeah.
That was morbid. I'm sorry, but this is what you asked for. This is what the title of the stream is.
This is the place for it.
Lately, I haven't been the biggest fan of like ultra violent kind of scary movies. The Babadook is probably the best one that I've seen recently. I love that one so much. Oh, it's awesome.
That's a good one.
Some of the animated movies, Halloween type movies. Paranorman was really good. I love rewatching The Corpse Bride. It's not, they're not scary, but there's tension sometimes. And of course, Coraline is.
Oh, it's my favorite. Oh God.
Do this. I met Neil Gaiman years and years ago. And had him sign my copy of Coraline.
Oh my God.
And I liked it so much I got it tattooed.
That's amazing.
On the other side, this is from his poem Instructions. Trust your heart and trust your story.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Awesome.
So yeah, Coraline's one of my favorite things. The book and the movie, they're both really good.
Mm-hmm.
Austin K is doing a live reading of that one on, I think, Halloween.
Yep.
Well, I know what I'm doing Halloween night.
Yeah.
It's cool.
I don't know what kind of classic horror monster I would be.
Dracula. It's classy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. I have no idea. Drawing a complete blank on that one.
Well, my favorite is Frankenstein's monster, but I
Right.
don't think I would want to be them.
Yeah. It's hard to say I'd want to be. I'd love to meet them, write a story about them. I don't know if I would want to live their experience.
I would want to be this Nosferatu.
That one is so good.
Oh, I would be one of the Lost Boys.
That would be fun.
Oh man.
They have it figured out.
I would enjoy being a ghost because then you could just go anywhere and do anything. Be a little ghost and just mess with people. I think that would be fun.
Or if you ever want to do a fun double feature, Nosferatu and Shadow of the Vampire with William Defoe, they go together really well because Shadow of the Vampire is like a fictionalized retelling of the filming of Nosferatu, and it's just fantastic. If you watch the two of them together, and you can see like the parallels between the recreations of the scenes and the actual scenes from the movie and stuff, and it's just, yeah, that's a fun way to pass a couple hours.
I've written it down.
Hope you enjoy it. I think John Malkovich is in it too. It's been a while since I've watched it. I believe he's the other main character. Oh, excuse me, man. I need to.
All right. Our other question is, have you ever purposefully stayed in a haunted place? If so, did anything happen?
My house.
I haven't slept in one, but I've been to one in downtown San Diego. Just felt creepy stuff when walking over a certain grave, but that was about it.
I don't put myself in those situations if I can help it.
Neither does my mom, but she grew up in a haunted house, and like my grandma has had tons of experiences, so they're
Right.
like, stay away from it. So growing up and stuff, I never really had the chance.
My stepfather died in this house, and I think for a couple days afterwards, he kind of lingered because a few things happened that just only he could cause. Let's just say. So, and every once in a while, our dog, who we since have to put to sleep, but she would sometimes, bark at corners for no particular reason. So,
Dogs are really perceptive,
yeah,
as well as kids.
yeah, we don't have any small children in the house, but
Like, my son will be in his crib, like, laughing and babbling, and I'm just like, stop. Whatever you're laughing at, don't. Just put it down. I moved into my husband's house, which was built in, like, 1942, this one, and there's 2 deaths in the house. It's not haunted anymore. No, wasn't going to deal with that. But, my father-in-law is very open about stuff, so I was like, go down to his house. He would love to talk to you. I don't want you here. But I remember the first couple years that we were married. We've been married 6 years now. I would lay in the bed and just hear footsteps going up and down the hallway. Just boom, 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 boom. And the house is lifted off the ground
Ooh.
So it's like, it's at least 3 foot off the ground. And so everything, like wood floors, there's no central air and heat. Like it is seriously like a cabin. And you can hear everything. And I would just sit there and just be like, it sounds like someone's pacing in the freaking hallway. Like, I don't know if that's just my heart pounding in my ears or like what, but they're like, oh yeah, like it's always been that way. And I was like, I don't freaking think so. Absolutely not. We will not be doing that all night.
Oh my gosh.
And then my father-in-law was like, well, if you ever encounter anything, tell him to come down and talk to me. I'd love to talk to a ghost. And I was like, great. I'll send him your way.
My younger sister and her family live in a house that was originally built about 1920. And the original owner passed away after a very long and happy life. And my sister says that sometimes she does sense a presence, but she thinks that the original owner's happy to have them there, the little family, the 2 little kids.
Right.
So, you know, sometimes they can be very benevolent.
Yeah. I don't know that I've ever stayed anywhere that I knew was haunted. I know I used to have like weird dreams as a child that I thought was like maybe ghosts, but other than that, I haven't really had any ghostly experiences. I've always kind of stayed away from that kind of stuff.
I don't know if it was a ghost or just hallucination, because like I see things when I'm super tired. And so like I had a room to myself as a kid for a couple of years, and so our hamster died, and I looked in the dollhouse and there he is, and it looks like he was dipped in flour, just eating seeds. It's like, what the heck?
Like, what is this?
It's the ghost of the hamster.
A friend of mine, after her cat had to be put down, said that the ghost of her cat stayed for quite some time and would come cuddle her on the bed and stuff when she was feeling down. So
my friend also, the one in Tennessee, said he has a ghost cat, but he only ever sees the butt, like the tail end of it, but never the front. Yeah. But it's like this calico cat. It's like he doesn't have a cat, but he sees the butt end of a cat in his house all the time. Tips for writing dark fiction. I have opinions, but you know, like not everyone agrees, and that's fine. But I have some horror writing friends, and I have one in particular that we seriously butt heads on horror writing. And we're like polar opposite, which is fine. Like I love her work and she supports mine and everything. But I think my biggest thing is like, why are you writing dark fiction? Because there's like a fine line between like torture porn or like glorifying real evil and abuse and dark things just for the sake of the shock value of it. But I think there's a really valuable conversation to be had when we like examine our darkest fears in fiction and kind of like provide some insight into them, to where, you know, like you're writing about a fear or abuse for the purpose of like telling something insightful and useful about it. Like I asked myself this question once I finally was like, okay, I'm a horror writer, but then I was like, but why? You know, like, why am I attracted to these kinds of stories? Because I was worried for a second. And then I was like, you know, I think that for me personally, it's so cathartic because I want to play out every scenario in my head. So because it makes me feel more prepared that if anything horrible ever happened to me in real life, that I almost wouldn't be surprised by it. So in a way, like, you're almost desensitizing people to the worst, you know, like helping them cope through the worst of what could happen to them. And like coming to terms, like for me, especially sexual assault, horror is a huge way that I like cope and process through really traumatic things that like happen throughout my life and stuff. And I mean, you can write horror for no reason and just because you love it, and that's awesome too. But I just enjoy reading and consuming horror that kind of has like layers. I think that's really fun as well.
I don't think that horror as allegory works very well, but like it can speak to, you know, common anxieties and stuff. I think Stephen King talks a lot about that in Dance Macabre, I think it is. It just, you know, the like the different horror movies of the time would reflect, you know, the Red Scare and stuff like that. And I think that's a way that it can be useful. And of course, personal processing. I had a thought. I don't remember where it was going to go now. But
the common trends in horror really reflect the state of a culture at that time as well, because you can go back in time and see trends in the horror genre kind of revolved around the main anxieties of a culture. For instance, like Godzilla really immortalized the fear of nuclear war, and like framed that piece of history with something that we can consume and understand how overwhelming it was to like face the threat of nuclear war. And I just think that's really cool that fiction tells history through almost like a parable lens. You know, and you see this now with like the movie Get Out, Antebellum that just came out. Like there's a lot of trends of like really analyzing racial tensions and cohesiveness and inclusion and stuff. And it's almost like by making those kinds of stories, it's processing what's happened, framing it in a different light where we see it differently. And like, I think people look back on this era and look at those kinds of stories and be like, this is directly related to the climate of the culture at the time.
Yeah. Well, art in most ways is going to reflect culture in some way. And I think the blossoming of horror over, say, you know, the last, when was the first like real horror movie? Well, over the last 100 years or so, say, for instance, has also just kind of expressed the anxiety of modern life. Like I've listened to a lot of true crime podcasts. I really enjoy those. Well, not really enjoy. I have a love-hate relationship with them. But one of the podcasts I was listening to, the hosts were kind of talking about why they love true crime, and the conclusion that they and their therapists had basically come to is that it's a way for people to deal with anxiety. So I think a lot of times writing horror is a way of dealing with our own anxieties, our own fears of the unknown, and on a larger scale, then it gets into the cultural zeitgeist.
And it's also great for exacting revenge. You know what I'm saying? Like, I had this one guy that I was involved with in college who was obsessed with classifying everyone that we knew as like animals. They're like, if they were a serial killer, they would kill like a fox or they would kill like a bear. And he like was just obsessed with like categorizing people in this way. And when there was a very ugly separation of that friendship, I wrote a story about kind of like his archetype, but he ends up getting like cornered by all these people in animal masks, and like it all like turned back on him. It was so cathartic. Oh my God. Like one of the most satisfying things I had ever written, for real.
I love that.
Yeah.
So one writing tip that I would have for writing dark fiction would be to use visual verbs. So instead of verbs like the bone broke, it could be like the bone splintered and the ends ground on each other, kind of thing. So
Craft lady up here. Out of the meta and into the technical. Let's do it.
Things like that. Just you can list out different verbs that have different sounds and different like feelings to make it feel more tension. And you can describe things with double entendre. So describe the shawl like a shroud, and just different things like that. Like I have a guy in my Paris Catacombs short story I just wrote today where he's dusty, but I said it looks like he was just recently exhumed. So from the catacombs. So you can add just things that have more imagery, more like you can feel the verbs happening, and like I don't know, it's really fun to play with that.
Like if it was a romance, you could say he was like powdered, like with powdered sugar. But the language is like the language. Yeah, there's a lot that depends on language and voice as well. Like your characters are going to describe things based on the frame in which they see the world as well. And also another thing I thought of just real quick is please give your reader a freaking break every once in a while. Ease the tension. Don't give them whiplash. Dole out their anxiety in like morsels. You know what I'm saying? Because I just read a book. I read a YA that like I couldn't sleep. I had the worst anxiety attack because the tension was at 100% from beginning to end. And that was too much. It was too much. Like, please don't be ruining people's nights. Well, actually do ruin people's night sleep. Do it all the time. But there's room for comedic relief as well.
As for advice, I would say find fellow dark fiction writers, find a community, because what you're writing can be more of a sensitive topic. And I definitely know other dark fiction authors who have had challenges when it comes to beta reading, because the people who are reading their beta are not dark fiction readers, and they kind of rip it apart because of the dark content, which is never good for one's self-esteem as a writer. So find your community and make sure when you do beta that they are actually your target audience. That is my advice.
So I have a question for finding beta readers, and when you publish something, do you put trigger warnings on it, even if it's already labeled dark? And if you do, how do you go about doing that?
That's kind of a one.
Yeah, because I've just written one that has a suicide attempt in it. And so it's like you want to let people know that that's going to be in there, even though it's already labeled dark. But like, how do you do that?
Putting some kind of warning at the beginning of the text, I think, would probably be the best way if you want to do that. Just say this work contains content warning, kind of thing, and just be open about it.
Yeah.
I feel like the beta readers that I've kind of conversed with understand that up front when I give them the synopsis. Like, it's clear in the synopsis, like there is tragic things going on, there are dark things, and it's a noir. It's going to be kind of gritty and gross, and you might not love it. But also, it's important to never send your manuscript to someone who doesn't read your genre. Like, if they just do not like your genre, they're not going to be the right person to pick out the tropes and like analyze it from the point of view of the genre. because they're going to be judging it by romance standard or contemporary standard. And you want someone who's familiar with kind of like the current market to give you an honest feedback.
Cool.
Yeah.
Should move on to the next question.
Yep. We have, what is one dark fiction trope you would never write?
Vampires.
No.
Just don't feel like there's anything new I could do with that.
Maybe that's the challenge.
I may not say that, but maybe I will. I don't know.
Yeah, recent vampires have become like a parody. So
Yeah.
to do with that, whatever.
I need to learn more about dark fiction tropes to learn more about them first before I would decide. But yeah, I need to get more reading done first.
I would say obviously like the bad tropes would be ones that like I wouldn't do. So like, you know, the one where, you know, they kill off all of the gays or black guy dies first, because, you know, those are still, you know, cliched tropes from times past that, you know, I would say most people probably try to stay away from these days. But
True.
and zombies, I'm not really a big fan of zombies, but I don't know. I feel like
What?
yeah, I've never.
Goodbye. It was good talking to you. I'm back, Brooks.
I don't like zombies either.
They've always been my
I'm a zombie
least
bitch.
favorite. But when I think about it, I have seen a lot of like outbreak type movies, and I don't know. I just
Anything that has to do with pathology. Oh, I'm so there. I just love it.
yeah.
How did you like Train to Busan?
I didn't see that one.
That's like my favorite zombie movie now.
Are you serious? Well, I have to watch it then. I'm also an alien girl. I love aliens and zombies.
Yeah.
Aliens are my real, like, they're number one. Zombies are a close second. Ever since World War Z. Because it was like the best thrill I had ever had, like watching a movie in theater, because it was just done like so realistically. And, you know, in the face of 2020, I'm like, if coronavirus was a zombie plague, we'd be so bummed. I mean, for real. I mean, like, it would happen exactly like in World War Z, where it just like explodes. And I'm just like, it was just so realistic. I was like, what? I loved it.
Oh my gosh.
So Train to Busan is a zombie outbreak in South Korea.
Okay, I did start watching that. I think it was like late at night, and I was like reading subtitles and like couldn't keep up with them. But that is on my watch list. Yeah,
Okay.
It looked amazing.
The reviews are really good.
I'll have to go back and finish it now.
I'm also not as familiar with dark fiction tropes, so I'm not sure what is out there that like has become cliche. And I like classic monsters, you know, werewolves and
Me too.
Yes.
and all that. Yeah, I see your background there. I have this one idea about a story using skinwalkers, and I keep backing off of it because I feel like
You said it. You said it. You said it out loud.
Because I don't want to be disrespectful to the culture, but there's like no material out there because, you know, the Navajo people are very private about it. So I'm kind of like, how can I take this idea and make it into something that isn't going to be exploitative?
I'm really glad Alston's not here, because she would have thrown up and just died, because she will not say that out loud. She won't even say it out loud. She's like, it starts with an S, ends with a K-E-R, and then she'll like scramble the middle letters. I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, I can't say it. My grandma told me I could never say it. That's the one thing that she's weird about. She's like not superstitious about anything, but that one thing, I guess, just traumatized her.
Yeah. I had some Navajo friends in college, and they would talk about it a little bit, but it was always just like very downplayed.
I'm like that about one thing. If I could like ASL it, I would butcher it. But okay. The tall guy with the long arms and a top hat. Don't. I can't. No, I'm traumatized about that guy. Okay. Like I can't. That's the one thing I'm superstitious about. Like we don't talk about him. We don't think about him. Like I had my little cousins come over one day. Oh my God. I'm the worst aunt of all time. Nephews. And they were like, we were watching this movie about whatever. And like, we heard the story of, whatever. And I was like, that's true. I was like, don't joke about that. That is 100% true. And I think I scared the piss out of them because then their mother called me the next day and was like, yeah, they're not allowed to even talk about it now because they didn't sleep all night. Thank you very much. And I was like, I'm just saying, I'm trying to save their little butts from getting caught up in something they don't want to be in. That's all I'm saying.
So this is the part where I confess that I've been in a text-based role-play game since 2004, and we often do these game-wide plots. And so in 2012, I did one based around that for Halloween.
Oh my God.
It was so much fun because I got to write like people, experiencing really scary stuff, and it was great. And I based a lot of it off the haunted house in Disneyland.
I mean, creepypasta has been the source of many sore moments of my life.
Yeah.
Like, but I love the story, so I like being scared, but I like being scared, but I don't like being scared. But that's,
It's kind of like riding a roller coaster. Like, you're safe, knock wood, because, in theory, at least it's been tested and safety inspected and all that kind of thing. And there's that momentary adrenaline, but then you also, have the simulation of being in danger.
Yeah.
So there's that kind of being scared. And then there's kind of being scared where, it's really being scared because you don't have a safety net.
That's true. Yeah. The worst. Oh, sorry. Go. Sorry.
So I can read horror. I can watch horror. I can't play horror games that are like video games because the controllers vibrate when things are coming at you. And it's like, I'm going to die. And it's me that's going to die. And it's like, no, I can't.
I love those VR horror games where it's like you're like looking around the room. There's all the jump scares. I can never do that. I'm way too skittish, which, by the way, I'm really skittish in general. Like, I am jumpy. In the daylight at noon on a sunny day, I am jumpy. Like, and maybe it's because I am neck deep in horror writing like all the time that I'm just like, don't, what?
What's really annoying is when you're working on a horror movie, and so you have to light the creature, but you have to do it for every camera move. But it's cut so fast to make it more scary that it's like jumping into your face that you have to light it and then light another one and light another one. And you put it in dailies in this big theater room where you can watch your work. And they have to loop it with your lead. And so you're just like having a seizure watching this thing loop that's like 2 frames long. It's like, oh my gosh. It's like I worked on a Resident Evil movie and just like this, we called him Mr. McNeedy. He looked like Spanish ham. He's just like this move and then like this move and then this move. We're all separate cameras and it's just like, oh my gosh, I hate these jump scares that it just takes so much work to do such a short thing.
Right. Right.
I'm going to try to appreciate the lighting a lot more the next time I watch a scary movie.
All right. The next question is, would you ever write a dark fiction serial?
Never
Yes. I think I kind of have an idea for one. I wanted to write like an interconnected 7-book series based around the 7 deadly sins, but not like outright, which I know is kind of a trope, but the way that I wanted to do it was like really like horror stuff. But I think I would do that, like have a separate story for each like theme, but then weave them all together. And did y'all know that the Green Mile was a cereal? Just saying.
I'm an old. I remember when it came out.
Yeah, it was cool.
I still need to watch it. I finally watched the Shawshank Redemption.
My novel Fidele, I actually originally started publishing it. Well, I originally published it as a serial on my website and on Archive of Our Own, which is primarily a fan fiction website, but you can publish some original stuff there too. Mainly because I had been fiddling with it for 2 years and realized that if I don't get this out in front of people, I'm never going to stop playing with it. So, yeah, in its original form, it was very long and had a lot more cliffhangers, which got edited out when I was preparing it to self-publish otherwise. So I kind of done it.
What I write are more flash fiction short stories, so they're really short, and so I don't know how to have the characters live long enough to be able to do a serial yet.
Maybe I would for that cozy mystery series I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
It might just in general, a dark fiction serial might work better if things are related thematically.
Mm-hmm.
Anthologized maybe a bit.
They all incorporate shadows.
Yeah.
I'd just like to point out, for anyone considering traditional publishing, there are not a lot of agents that go for horror. Only a few. So when you find them, mark them as first priority on your query list. A lot of agents go for thrillers, but only a few go for horror, and even fewer for science fiction. Like genre horror is not so much a thing, which like genre anything is not so much a thing anymore. Like crossovers are a huge deal. Like genre bending or like outside of the box of the genre. So for all of you out there working on something new that you don't think fits into a box, your project's perfect to query. Just so you know.
Whatever the story calls for. I don't think you want to end every chapter with a cliffhanger, because again, you do need to give the reader a minute to catch their breath. But of course, now I'm thinking of the perils of Penelope Pitstop, where every ending with a cliffhanger. That kind of thing probably doesn't do so well with modern audiences. But like, if you approach it as like a plot structure kind of thing, any place where it's like break into the next act is probably a good place for a cliffhanger.
Cliffhangers can have varying degrees of severity as well. So it can just be a hook that will lead you into the next chapter, or it can be a huge plot point that's like come to a climax that you have to get to the next chapter to get the resolution. So you can really play with levels of tension with cliffhangers and put as many as you want in there, as long as you're not exhausting the frick out of me. I'm just kidding. Do what the hell you want.
I've never written one in a horror yet, so no idea.
Yeah, I don't know that I have like a specific number for something like that. And I probably write more of like hooks rather than cliffhangers. Like I'm more of there's a plot twist, and of course my book is the first in a series, and so the tail end of that first book is a big hook that just drives you straight into the next book. So yeah, I don't know.
One tip that I have heard for like writing scenes is to always come late and leave early. So come late to the action and leave it early, and then there will always be kind of that momentum to carry you forward. Because if you get there too early, then you're kind of like piddling around before you get to the interesting stuff. And if you stay too late, then you've almost watered down the tension. So start kind of like at the inciting incident at the chapter, and then like end as soon as you possibly can, and then like, move on.
That's good.
There's a Japanese comic artist whose name is Junji Ito, I think it is.
I have his autograph.
Oh, that's neat. I haven't read any of his stuff, but I've watched a couple analysis videos of it. And one of the things that I really liked that one of the commentators said is that he is the master of turning the page. Kind of like, you know, you turn the page and you get this sudden striking image that's like the central horror of that particular story. So yeah, he's one of those guys I've been meaning to seek out and get to know a little better. I'm excited about that idea, just that, you know, you turn a page and boom.
Yeah. Because you have all these little panels building up the tension, and then you turn it and it's a double page spread of just the body horror. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So good.
That's cool.
That's really neat.
That's really cool.
That's cool. All right. So I guess a good question would be, what got you into dark fiction, or why is it that you wanted to write dark fiction?
Fictionalizing trauma from a very early age. I think it started with like the death of my dad, and then like dealing with themes of grief in my early writing. And then like as I got older, like school bullying and like just all the horrible things that can happen to a person, I have very intense emotional reactions to things. So whatever you can feel in a situation, I'm usually feeling that at maximum volume. And it can be like a lot to process. So instead of, I process through fictionalizing because it puts me at a distance from it, where I can like analyze my own experience and then also recreate it into something that's my own. And I've had a lot of crazy shit happen to me, so I just got plenty of material for days, for a lifetime. But it's totally okay, because I mean, I'm obviously very well adjusted and perfectly fine, and it's fine.
Yeah.
For horror, I've just always loved it. Like, the villains were my favorite as a kid, always. Maleficent was amazing. Like, she was my aspirations. Like, who wouldn't want to be able to turn into a dragon? And then we would watch scary movies together as a family. So we watched an old black and white movie of The Raven, and it traumatized us all. We had to turn it off because the coffin opened and there was a really creepy body in it. I'm like, no. So like just things like that. And then discovering the Universal monster movies and falling in love with them and studying their lighting and studying German expressionism and how they would like paint the light on the actors and the backgrounds and have these wonky set designs and just that whole atmosphere and fog everywhere just captured my imagination, and I love it. I love the shapes and the colors and the ambience. Just I love to play in it.
I've always loved ghost stories and things like that. And, you know, the classic novels. I read Frankenstein, read Dracula when I was young and impressionable. And I think a lot of ways it goes back to the anxiety thing for me. It's just like, it's a way of dealing with fear in controlled circumstances. And I like scaring people. When I can do it, it's really great. It's not something that I try to do with every story. In fact, I tend to write sweeter stuff than dark. But occasionally, you know, you want to just kind of go into the dark side, see what you can do to go bump in the night.
Yeah. I think for me, the reason that my fiction is more of a dark fiction is highlighting or maybe even overemphasizing the dark side of society and humanity in general, and almost like pointing out or pointing towards the injustices that people, you know, struggle with, that not everybody even realizes. So I think that's a big part of it for me, where it's like, hey, look, this is happening, but it also happens in real life, kind of thing. Yeah.
I'd love to talk about a real instance of that I saw in a movie, like a horror movie that really enraged me when I first saw it, because I was like, this is just gore porn is what it is. But then at the end, it had such a like cultural message that I was like, whoa, okay, brilliant, I see you. And that was Unfriended 2, which is the dark web version of like the people on the Skype call, and then the hacker comes into the Skype call and starts picking them off one by one. It's like, you can't log off because the guy stole this hacker's computer and whatever. And at the end, you realize like all these friends were having their game night on Skype, which turned into game night for all these sickos on the dark web. And you're really upset about it. You're like, what kind of sick MFers would do this to people? And then it zooms out and you're in the perspective of the person sitting behind the computer, and you just watched all of this happen to them, and you went to pay to watch the movie for shitty things to happen to people. And so it's like, are you any better than someone who would pay to do this to someone in real life if you would go watch a movie about it? And I was like, oh, I've never felt so like called out. I was like, wow, like that was really, really interesting. Just it like highlighted our fascination with like bad things happening to people, kind of like the car wreck that you can't look away from, or you know, and it really made you question. Another movie that did that was my friend Jeffrey Dahmer. That movie made me really uncomfortable at the end, because at the end, it's framed Jeffrey Dahmer in such a way that you really want him to kill his first victim. Like, it's turned it around to where he's the victim and you're wanting him to get back at the world after all the shitty stuff that's happened to him. And it was just the way the movie was framed that made you really like fall in love with him as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And like him as like the underdog and stuff. And so it's really fun that horror can do that in a way that it like makes you upset, but then turns it around on you as well. And I think that's really fun. And to your point, I was just thinking those were some like examples of that stood out in my mind.
Yeah. All right, we have another question. If one of your stories was turned into a movie or TV show, is there a particular director you would trust with your story child?
Need to look up their name.
I have thought about this.
Me too.
There's a director called Todd Haynes, I believe it is. He did I'm Not There, the kind of semi-biography about Bob Dylan, and he's done some other lovely like period stuff. And I'd love him to do Fidele if that ever happened, because it's set in the early 1950s. It's a post-war kind of story, and I think he could capture the time very well. And he's very sensitive towards underdog subjects.
So I'm going for like high names, like people that are well known. So Guillermo del Toro, of course, would be amazing with the creature work and the color palettes, and just the overall aesthetic would be amazing. And then for the more thriller type would be James Wan, who did The Conjuring.
Mm.
So I really like how he does the family and like pulls it back to where you feel for the family and has a nice family connection moment, but still goes back into the horror and you really feel for the characters. And they're not just paper cutouts of people or people that you just despise and want this to happen to. Oh, Hitchcock, if he was still around. For sure. For sure.
I think it would be cool to have Ari Aster and M. Night Shyamalan do a collab on my movie, but I want Steven Spielberg to do the ending, because M. Night Shyamalan has a reputation of just not doing the most satisfying endings. So, like, I would love for those three to get together and then have Kyle Dixon and Michael Stein do my score. They're the Stranger Things composers. I would love them combined with maybe like James Horner. Like really the thematic and the synth, and bring it together.
Oh my gosh. I don't really know any directors or director names. Because my book is a high fantasy, maybe whoever did the Avatar movies, just because of their ability to do those fantastical characters.
James Cameron.
Yeah. Beautiful colors with the different colored skin and everything. Just because the characters in my world are all kinds of different colors and attributes and everything. So I think they did a good job creating a fantasy world in that one. So, yeah. That is that.
Devin said he would get Hitchcock if he was still around.
Admirable. So what do you guys think of the whole surprise versus suspense thing that Hitchcock would talk about? With, you can either have the conversation and the bomb goes off and they all die, or the conversation and you know there's a bomb under the table and you're suspensed the whole time of wondering when it's going to go off, and then it goes off. How do you guys balance surprises versus continued suspense in your guys' novels?
That's really interesting. I don't think I've ever thought of that. Like that differentiation. I'm going to write that down. Excuse me. Get my notebook.
I think I do a little bit of both. Because the main plot of my novel is kind of a survivalistic competition, And so in that sense, you know about the competition and you know that they're all out there and they could die depending on what they run into. So like I feel like there's suspense that's carried throughout in that sense because they have this time period and you're like, are they going to make it through? Are they going to die? You don't really know, but you know that they're kind of in that dangerous situation. And then I have like complete plot twist surprise at the end that is just unexpected, but it fills in a bit of information. So I don't know. I guess a little bit of both is nice.
Yeah.
They can both be effective.
I think a surprise works better for a small plot point than a large one. Because you don't want to, build your world up to the climax and then have a volcano set explode, for instance. If you want to have a volcano, you should have tremors and plumes of smoke coming out of the pictures in the mountain and all that kind of thing. You want to still build that up.
Yeah. You don't want to build up to a jump scare.
I think suspense gives me more of an anxious reaction. Like it builds almost like an unbearable amount of like screaming at the TV. Oh my God, turn around. Like, cause but like a surprise will usually shock me into crying because I didn't expect it. And so then I like feel the full tragedy of it. Whereas I've been able to prepare for the tragedy if I know it's coming. And so like if two characters have a conversation, they suddenly blow up, I'm probably going to go, oh God. And then it's like a different kind of emotional reaction. There's a lot to be said about reader manipulation here.
Yeah.
Like the way of suspense that I remembered that I just drew inspiration from was the short story The Landlady by Roald Dahl. You guys have read that one? So this guy is looking for a bed and breakfast, and he goes into the bed and breakfast and he's signing the registry, and the names look familiar. He doesn't know why, but the names sound familiar. And he notices that all the animals in the rooms are all stuffed, and the little old lady is super nice, and none of the people on the register have ever checked out, and the tea tastes like bitter almonds. And by the time he's drunk the tea, he realizes those were all missing people reports that he had seen, and he just drunk the cyanide, and he's going to be stuffed in the attic with the rest of the guys. And so just this is such a good story. And so this whole idea of the names sound familiar ringing through his head while he's going about doing his routine and getting to know the landlady just really gets you a little bit on edge. And it's so good. Like he describes the wind as knives, and just everything is beautiful in that short story.
I have a question about language. How do you keep yourself from writing repetitive language in like if you're set in one particular setting? Because like my MC's out in the woods. There's only so much you can say about the woods. Okay. And there's mountains, so there's inclines, declines, which is like steep, slippery, sloping trail path. Like there's two words that I can't even come up with. Like I'm getting a little stale at 40K words now. I'm like, I need more vocabulary. So what do y'all do to like spice up your language?
Have you seen Brother Bear?
Yeah.
They have the two mooses.
The mooses.
I spy a vertical log, tree, something brown, tree.
That's funny. Yeah.
Well, I think, like in the case of mountains, for instance, instead of describing the slopes, describe what it's like to walk up them. Just, the weariness in the legs kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. But then she does that 100 times, so the other 99 times.
There's also atmospheric perspective, so the purpling of the mountains in the distance that you can have.
So from going from like a microscopic focus to like a big picture focus.
So like you're looking like the mountain in front of you is in focus, but through all the haze, they look different colors in the background.
Right.
Or just, I don't know, just the cloud formations on the mountains would be cool to describe.
Right. And there's
Where the
many
tree
levels
line
of
ends.
fatigue that she's feeling as well.
Yeah.
And like many levels of pain, because it's like Blair Witch meets Saw. So there's like, oh, you think it couldn't get any worse, but I used all my worst pain words in Act 1. So like, how can it get any worse? You know what I'm saying? Maybe I just have to be a little bit more selective. And also I'm having a little bit of like a brain fart about like singling in on the most important moments instead of doing like a play-by-play of the action. But I am zero drafting, so.
Well, you can move your extreme words to the end then. In the ending.
Yeah.
Like in the beginning, she's sore, and then she's aching, and then it's agony.
Right. Agony. That's a good word.
And by the end, she's writhing in pain.
Agony. Writhing. I actually do have a page in my notebook, like when I see a word that I'm like, I can use that, then I actually write it down so I don't forget. Or I'll pick up a book in my genre and start reading and be like, how did they describe it? Because
isn't there an emotion thesaurus or something? They might have a page on pain.
I don't have one of those. I have it on my Amazon cart. You know, emotion thesaurus. Where is my damn word page? Is it not in here? It might not have been.
Jules has a comment. You could have the MC looking for natural things that form the shape of letters as she walks, then spell out a creepy message.
Yeah.
Even nature is creeped out.
Nature's like, go home.
And maybe describing changes in the terrain. I don't know how the mountains are around Arkansas, but around here, you get high enough, there aren't any trees anymore because it's too the
right
is too high, and it's just granite and glaciers.
And the higher she gets, the less oxygen she has, so she could be getting lightheaded and hallucinate.
Harder to breathe.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So Jules also said, to add to the physical pain, you could describe blisters forming, rashes due to repeated friction, sweat burning in the eyes.
Oh, sweat burning in the eyes. I forgot about that. Sweat burning the eyes. That's always just the worst, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you can be in hell from the neck down, but once your sweat gets in your eyes, you're dead.
Especially with sunscreen.
Yeah. Oh, torturous. Widowmaker, tree limbs on the ground. Huh. Yeah, see, she has 3 laps to run, and every loop has like a different feature. So like the first one is called Anthill, and its main feature is like really extreme slopes, like, and she's just going up and down and up and down and up and down. And then the second is like the main feature is the wilderness, or like the river. I'm sorry, what am I saying? Just lost. Like, I'm telling you, I'm losing my words. The river. So she's like being dunked and waterlogged and like half drowned like every time she has to cross the river. But then like the third one is mostly flat land, but that's when the psychological element comes in because she's so ragged by then that she doesn't even like know it's real. So I've just been in the same loop for like 3 chapters. I'm ready to move on.
Water. if when she's being dunked, if the babbling of the water turns into the voices of people, like that would be cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just spitballing, but it'd be fun.
Like her dead method parents. Sorry, I'm not supposed to be working. Okay.
Trying to think of a good question for you.
It's another good point. Mosquitoes, the incessant hum of cicadas to the point where she wants to drive a nail through her skull to avoid the sound.
Oh, yeah.
And focusing on a different sense.
Yes. Okay. Switching your senses.
Yeah.
The smell of the trees to the smell of the dirt after rain.
Yes.
And the smell of yourself after you've been walking in the woods for a while.
Yeah.
Yummy.
The smell of blood, worrying about that attracting animals, depending on how injured she is.
Oh, there is a phantom bear that she's worried about. That's good. That's good. I'll when I get my royalty check, I'll throw y'all a couple bucks for these words.
And as Jules points out, brain eating amoebas.
Great artists steal outright.
Ooh, sorry. So depending on what kind of character she is, there's all sorts of dangers in the woods that people who aren't used to them wouldn't even think of.
Right.
So things that she could discover along the way that don't make her journey any easier. I said always make things worse.
Always make things worse. If it can get worse, it should.
Mm-hmm.
That's what James Patterson's masterclass said. He was like, go to every chapter and be like, what is the most ridiculous that I can make this with it still being believable? And then go with that. And I was like, excellent, James.
What is the most interesting way I could thoroughly break my character?
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah.
Good old infections.
For real. Brain eating bacteria. They found some of that in Texas or something. Was it Texas? Was it somewhere else where they had to shut off the water because they were like, oh yeah, there's a brain eating disease in the tap water.
That's terrifying.
Somehow I got onto the weird part of YouTube, and it was all about like cleaning out people's ears, and they would find cockroaches in the ears. Maybe something gets in her ear. I don't know.
Did you see that? Y'all stop it. Y'all are getting ghosts in my house. I swear to God. Just even hanging out with you. Y'all dragged cats in is what you did. Look what the cat drug in. Yeah, y'all are the cats dragging the weird stuff in my house. I swear to God, I thought I saw, was like, but I'm also tired, so.
So do you make fun of horror stories in your own stories? Like, do your characters poke fun at things that actually happen to them? No? I don't think so.
I don't have a sense of humor.
If I ever wrote a horror comedy, that would definitely happen.
Yeah.
But not straight horror.
I feel like there's a lot of foreshadowing. Like they're thinking about something, like they're really, like she's really thirsty. And you're like, oh, bitch, just wait 2 chapters and you'll have all the water you want. You know?
Right.
In that way, I laugh. I don't think the reader will be laughing. My character's definitely not laughing, but I am.
If you're not cackling with delight, you're not doing it right.
Right.
Maniacal laugh.
Exactly.
All right. Anybody have any other questions that we want to go over? I wasn't sure how late this was supposed to go.
My rabbit is running around my feet.
I have 2 cats crawling all over me. You just can't see them.
Ooh. Okay. I have a question. But y'all have to be honest, okay? Do y'all have any freaky deaky writing rituals that are like, they're weird? Like your weird writer stuff that you do like before you write or to inspire you to write or something like that?
I just do the whole light a candle, so I have scented candles. And sometimes I listen to horror soundtracks.
You don't call on the 4 winds?
I don't.
Well, I like to get an iced beverage of some sort. I usually have some sort of soundtrack playlist going for different things. I have a couple for different stories, and some of them are out of control. I have one for stuff that I'm working on right now that's 275 songs. But
wow.
They're musicians, so of course they're going to have a lot of music that makes me think of them. And it's different genres too. It's classical and pop and classic rock, all that kind of stuff.
For my first sci-fi book, my entire playlist was Samoan and Hawaiian, so that was fun.
Oh, I have a Hawaiian playlist too. It's got like, well, you know, like the Islander kind of music. It's got like the entire Moana soundtrack.
Yes.
Love that. Do y'all want to hear mine?
Yes.
Okay. Y'all cannot freaking judge me. I will never come back. Okay. I'm just now becoming open about this. I'm thinking about making a video on it. But ever since like 2015, I had a wild hair one night to like tear bits of pages out of my favorite books and then brew them with a bag of tea, like put tea with them and then French press it and then drink a cup of tea brewed out of the pages of my favorite books to internalize like their greatness. And every once in a while, I'll have myself, I call it the master's tea. I'll brew some pages from the masters. And I'm like, okay, get all that good inspiration flowing. Okay, I can do this.
That is so cool.
Yeah, it's like chaos magic or something, isn't it?
Yeah. You want to see? Look, I've got 10. I hadn't done this in a few years, but I got some on the when I need it. I got me some master's tea ready to go. If ever. And I think I'm fully ridiculous. Like, listen. Do I believe it's magic? No. Do I believe that it makes me feel special for 2 seconds? Yes. Therefore, it's worth it. You know? And I've always done weird crap like that. Like when I was a younger writer, I used to always have a piece of jewelry that reminded me of my story. Like I was carrying it around with me. So I had like it was like a fan fiction of Edward Scissorhands. And I had like a necklace with some scissors on it from Hot Topic. And it's like, I'm carrying Edward Scissorhands on my heart. Like, I'm a weird gal. And now y'all know me so well. And you're my sworn horror sisters for life.
Yes.
Yes.
Feel honored.
For me, I don't know that I really do anything extra when it comes to writing. I usually have my bottle of water. If it's the morning, I have a can of Monster with me. Usually listen to like Pandora Relaxation Station, as long as there's not words to the music. For my book right now with editing, I've been listening to blizzard sounds and crackling fire sounds just to get in the mood of being in a blizzard, because that's what's happening in the book, and not forgetting to mention the fact that there's snow on the ground, because I like to leave out details. But aside from that, I don't know. I guess the weirdest thing I do is, and this is something I've always done way back before all of my story idea creation planning would always happen as I lay down to go to bed. So like instead of counting sheep or whatever, I would just like play my own story and characters, like role play through in my own mind as I go to sleep. So I guess that's my weird thing that I do.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm a daydreamer.
I've never thought of it as that weird. Right, I will tell you, there are a few things that I have done purely for the sake of the story. And today, or yesterday rather, I'm not going to play it, but because I decided recently that because my main character in my current work in progress plays the ukulele, I need to too. So I got this yesterday.
Oh, neat.
And I now know how to make 3 chords.
Good job.
Yeah, I mean, doing stuff like that, like studying a different language or eating a certain food. I do stuff like that all the time. And I don't know if that's weird or not, but it does, I think it does help me, I don't know, solidify things.
Like empathize, be able to take yourself there.
Yeah, be able to describe things realistically and have the sense memory.
Right.
I just read lots of research books about what my characters are supposed to know.
Yeah.
So in my first sci-fi novel, the main character is a Samoan healer. So they're in space on another planet under the water, living in a giant nautilus shell, but still she needs to know the medicinal herbs and stuff. So I have a whole textbook basically of the different herbs, how many leaves were used for different salves and stuff like that. So I could actually pull from reality. So I would read and highlight and take notes in those kinds of books while I was editing, just to make sure I got everything as accurate as possible.
Cool. All right, so we have another question. Do you read dark fiction all the time, or do you typically read other genres to give your brains a break?
I read sci-fi sometimes too, and fantasy.
I definitely can't read dark fiction all the time. I definitely prefer reading in like Southern Gothic genre and like that folk noirish stuff, but it does get really heavy really fast. And so like this past time I went to pick up a YA thriller and it turned out to be worse than the adult books that I was reading. But I'm trying to think of what I'm reading right now. I will kind of like change up the setting of where, because a lot of the books that I read take place small towns, wilderness, out in the country. So I will change up the setting and like go somewhere else as if I'm going, but like I will go somewhere else. And sometimes it's nice to read, like to go from reading adult to YA because the voice is just so much more accessible and like chewable, I guess. And there's only so much pretty writing that you can read without getting a migraine.
Yeah.
So I like to dumb it down a little bit, go read some middle grade. I still read a ton of middle grade and YAs and stuff. But I don't read flowery, romantic anything, to be honest. Because I don't know, I'm just kind of like a non-emotional person, I guess you could say. Like, romance is like, I don't know how to make two people love each other, because I'm just like, I decide that I love you and I choose to do so, and that's all there is to it. And that's like the majority of romance in my life. I'm just like, I choose to love you now and forever. Goodbye.
Well, there are a lot of genres that I read, so I don't think there's any time that I've ever decided I'm going to only read this, because there's too much good stuff out there.
There is so much good stuff.
Yeah, like I just reread the Eddie Dickens trilogy, which I think is elementary. Like the main character is 11, but it's so good. It's by Philip Arda, and his writing style is just goals. So it's a narrator telling the story, and they poke fun at the writing itself and the characters. Like one character is cognizant that they are in a book, and the rest of them aren't. And everything is just over the top, complete insanity. It takes place in England during like the horseback era. So like I don't think there are any cars yet. And so just everybody goes everywhere by horse, including to the bathroom. And these characters bring oil portraits in their trench coats of their family with them so they can make anywhere home. It's such utter insanity, and it just brings me giggles. Like, oh my gosh. And there's some darker stuff in there. Like the kid is with this Trope guy who makes him swear that he will act until he's given permission to stop being an actor. And so he has to act like an orphan. So he ends up in an orphanage. Ends up having to lead this revolt. Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And just reading these elementary and middle school books sometimes just is a breath of fresh air.
What's it called again?
The Eddie Dickens trilogy. The first one is A House Called Awful End.
That's cute. I do write middle grade as like a passion project, but I like middle grade fantasies especially. There's just something so like believable about it. It's like I can go back to being 10 and believe it wholeheartedly. And I'm like, I miss that. Like I miss the time, like when the wonder died in my heart, and I was like, oh, this really never will exist. I held out hope for so long that all these mythical creatures were just like hiding in the woods. And I was like, we're going to discover them and it's going to be fine. Like they're all here. They all exist. And then they didn't. And I was like, what? So disappointed. I held on to it.
3rd grade. I'm going to be an X-Wing pilot. And then I realized that might not happen in my lifetime. So instead, Egyptologist. Go discover mermaids. And then I realized there's not much left to discover with all the technology now. So I'll just make movies with all that stuff in it.
I really love memoirs too. Like The Glass Castle, one of my favorite books of all time. And a lot of my favorite books of all time are actually memoirs.
Yeah, I haven't really read as much as I should have. But I think I've read a lot of like YA romance or YA romance / fantasy romance. I don't know that I've actually read anything in the dark genre now that I think about it. I read a lot of boy love comics is what I read a lot of. So
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
My favorite books are usually actually history books. I have a lot of books that are like mysteries of the ancients and history's greatest weird shit. You know, you never call things like that, but you get the idea. I love like cryptology, I suppose.
Oh,
Things that are weird.
sorry.
Good.
I love like club books, like the Friday Night Knitting Club, the Jane Austen Book Club, like Tuesdays at 8 by Debbie Macmer, like anything where the Hot Flash Club. I love that. Like I love like cozy book club fiction where the book club's in the book. Like that's the one thing, because I was checking out my shelves and I was like, damn, I really need to diversify because there's nothing I read that's not heavy. And I'm like, no wonder I'm just stressed all the fucking time. And then I was like, wait a second, I have a whole shelf of like girl boss chick lit, like Devil Wears Prada. I don't know how she does it. I love those kind. And I love Sophie Kinsella. Like she's my one. I love Sophie Kinsella. And I love club stuff. Like the Friday Night Knitting Club is excellent. Just love it. It has a place in my heart.
Have you heard of Southern Vampire Book Club? Or the
No.
Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires?
Shut up.
I heard of it. It was on somebody's TBR.
Shut up. Oh, wait. Oh, I think I saw this. I think I saw that. I recognize that cover. Oh, yeah, I got to put that on my Goodreads.
Supernatural thriller set in the 90s about a woman's book club that must protect its suburban community from a mysterious and handsome stranger who turns out to be a blood-sucking fiend.
That's brilliant. I love that.
Also, like the Divine Sisters of the Yaya. Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood. It's another favorite. You're going to get me into listing books and I will never stop.
It's a good thing most of my books are in storage instead of in front of me, or I'd start listening them off too. Oh my goodness.
For this question, I have a bunch of ghost books, but they're all about Japan. So I need to diversify.
Japanese ghost stories are so good, though.
I have books on like all of the supernatural yokai and stuff like that. And they're ghost stories. And there's like, I wanted my bad guy in one of my stories to be based off of this story about an oni. So somebody who wears a mask of a demon, but if they're evil themselves, they are transformed into the demon. They don't even have to die. And so they get the powers of the oni. And it was really cool. But, yeah, a book on poisons would be really nice to have.
I've got a couple books that I think it was Writer's Digest put out long ago, probably sometime in the 90s, about how murders are persecuted or prosecuted. There we go. You know, like a basic what happens to the body after death kind of thing. I mean, I can't go into too much detail about that because I can't handle it.
Have any of y'all read Caitlyn Dodie? Like The Smoke Gets in Your Eyes and Other Tales from the Crematory. And she writes nonfiction books about decomposition and working as a funeral director. Those are really good books.
Her name's Caitlyn Dodie.
Caitlyn Dodie. And she's on YouTube.
I think I've seen her.
As Ask a Mortician.
Yeah. Cool.
But she talks about like the cultural trends in death, like in other countries, how they like process grief and stuff, and how American cultures like very much wants to separate you as soon as possible from your loved one, and how it's almost like stunted our grieving process, that we don't like, we think they're gross and like biohazardous like as soon as you die. And she's like, no, like as soon as you die, nothing about you is hazardous because everything's dead. And she's really funny in how she talks about things because she's just so comfortable talking about death as a normalized topic. And she's a lot of good information too.
It's cool. I have to look into that.
It'd be really
And
nice
it's that one called
to
Your Cat Will Eat Your Eyes. Mm-hmm.
It'd be nice to get a book about wounds and like with how much blood loss each kind of wound would have and what kind of side effects it would have. Like that kind of book would be super helpful.
You can always go to an ICU and talk to an ER nurse.
That's great.
If you frame it as like you're doing research, like you can set up interviews with just about anyone in the world you really want to talk to.
And people love talking about the professions if they're passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And no, Jules, I have not read Quaidon by Hearn. I have not. I've put it on the list.
Hey, Sid, say Pocket's here.
Hello, Sid.
Well, I don't know about y'all, but I feel like I'm about worded out talking for 2 hours straight.
I concur. All right. Do we have any last lingering questions from anyone out there? Otherwise, probably call it.
What's a really good book that crosses horror with sci-fi?
Jurassic Park. Also, Prey by Michael Crichton. Anything Michael Crichton, he's one of my favorites. Oh, there's so many. Like, you know, the book World War Z. It's very science-based. It's like a history book written 20 years after the zombie war. And so it's written from multiple perspectives. So, like, you get the military perspective, the medical perspective, all that stuff. That's really cool. And let's see, The Fifth Wave. That's a cool series. Checking my shelf. You should also definitely watch Interstellar at your earliest convenience.
Okay, I own it and I haven't seen it yet.
What? Oh my Lord, it's the best movie. It's 3 hours long and we will watch it back to back twice. Like,
Wow.
it is so good. So good.
Favorite non-dark fiction author? For children's, it's Philip Arda, who did the Eddie Dickens trilogy.
Jodi Picoult writes family dramas. And she's really good. Also, Sue Monk Kidd is one of my favorite adult kind of drama. And Jeanette Walls. Jeanette Walls writes good nonfiction.
My favorite Star Wars author is Timothy Zahn.
Jennifer Cruzy. She writes romantic comedies.
Oh, well, I guess that's kind of dark. Never mind.
Non-dark.
I was going to say Alice Sebold, but she's the Lovely Bones girl. That's definitely dark. Laurie Halse Anderson is a good everything writer. And she can do literally anything. She does some historical stuff, but as well as like YA fantasies. They're great. She writes across a lot of genres.
Trying to think of who wrote. Oh, I don't want to do that right now. Who wrote my favorite comics art lately? Can't remember their name. I'm gonna start with that on the stream.
All right. Do you guys have any?
Kayla, I think we lost you.
I think you're frozen.
Me?
No, Kayla.
Started to say something and then it went quiet. Jules,
So
thank
you
you
wanted to add before? Sorry, I swear I keep cutting out there. I don't know if you guys said anything or not. All right. Well, thanks to everybody for coming and watching. Make sure you check out all of these ladies' channels. Subscribe to them. They are all listed below. And thank you guys for joining us.
Bye. Have a good
Bye,
night.
everybody.